They told her to play the violin to humiliate her, to get a laugh. They expected a joke, some shaky notes, a stumble, maybe even tears. She was the punchline before she touched the strings. But the moment her bow kissed the violin, the room fell silent. No one laughed. No one moved. For one breathless moment, the world stood still, as if time itself paused to listen. And everyone watching asked the same question. How could she, of all people, possibly know how to play that? It was the fifth period, second floor, last row by the window, that quiet corner Angela Wilson had claimed since the first week of school. Same routine, same silence, same scuffed violin case resting delicately between her legs like something sacred. She never spoke unless she had to, eyes mostly down, voice barely above a whisper. Just another quiet face blending into the noise of teenage chaos.
Until that day.
Mr. Carter, the PE teacher somehow roped into organizing the school's annual talent show, stood at the front of the room with a clipboard and the energy of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Singers, dancers, magicians, whatever you got, bring it, he said, his tone hovering somewhere between amusement and obligation. Then it happened. Ms. Randall, the math teacher with a permanent beige sweater and the attitude of a hall monitor with tenure, leaned over to Carter, smirking like she'd just thought of something clever. She tilted her head toward Angela without even bothering to lower her voice. "What about our little violinist in the corner?" she said loud enough for everyone to hear. The class laughed. Not with kindness. Not with interest. The kind of laugh that comes before a storm you don't see coming. Carter laughed, loud and careless. "Come on, Wilson, show us what that thing can actually do. You've been dragging it around all year. Might as well give us a show." The classroom erupted, not cruelly at first, more like a wave of chuckles dressed as playfulness. But Angela felt it. Not encouragement, not support, just the kind of laugh that hides a challenge, wrapped in the assumption that she'd say no. Her fingers clenched around the handle of her violin case. She kept her eyes down. Ahead of her, someone whispered something about screeching cats. Another followed with a mock violin sound, sharp and ugly. It caught on quickly, like a stain that spreads before you notice. Miss Randall smiled from the front like she'd handed out candy instead of cruelty. "Just teasing, sweetheart," she said, as if that made it softer. That's when Angela finally looked up. Not at them. Through them. "I'll do it," she said. Her voice flat.
"Come."
Like she was ordering lunch. The room fell silent. Even Carter blinked. She didn't say it again. She didn't need to. She unlatched the case, placed it carefully on the desk, and started writing her name on the clipboard that had been making its rounds. Angela Wilson. Miss Randall laughed again, but this time, it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, that's the spirit, I guess," she muttered, trying to mask her surprise with warmth. But something in her shifted. Doubt maybe. Or regret. She hadn't expected Angela to say yes. She'd expected her to fold. The day continued. Bells rang. Lockers slammed. Sneakers squeaked through tired hallways. But under all that noise, something had changed. Because here's what they didn't understand. They thought they saw her, a quiet black girl with a violin and nothing to say. What they didn't see was the cramped third-floor apartment she shared with her mother and little brother. Or how she practiced every night with a towel shoved under the door, muffling the sound so the neighbors wouldn't start banging on the walls. They thought it was just a school talent show. Just another quiet girl with a violin. What they didn't realize was, this wasn't a hobby for her. It was her heartbeat. The one thing in her world that felt untouchably hers. And now, for once, everyone would hear it. But saying yes to the stage didn't mean the fear disappeared. Kindly do us a quick favor. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you're touched by this story. Your support keeps us creating and sharing more powerful stories as this one. Thank you. Now, let's get back to our story. Her name didn't stick in people's minds. Angela Wilson blended into the hallways at Lincoln High like wallpaper, there but unnoticed. She didn't crowd around lockers, didn't argue back when classmates made slick little jabs under their breath. She just kept moving, shoulders tense, violin case clutched like a secret. But if you followed her after the last bell, past the corner store and the chipped mural on Franklin Avenue, up 3 crooked flights to apartment 2B, you'd meet the real Angela. Not the one who whispered through the day, but the one who roared through strings. The front door barely clicked shut before the violin case was open. No snacks, no screen time, just her and that instrument and the peeling paint in her shared bedroom. Her mother's voice would always float in from the kitchen. "That you, baby?
Yeah.
You eat anything yet? Not hungry. You better not starve yourself. Don't make me come in there." Angela would smile because she already knew her mom never came in while she practiced. Amara Wilson worked nights downtown, cleaning law offices and banks that shined by morning. She left at 6:30 sharp, came home near dawn, always exhausted. But she still listened. From the other side of that thin wall, every single night, there were no headphones, no amplifiers, just truth,
Just tone.
If Angela hit a wrong note, if her rhythm faltered, her mom would tap 3 times on the wall. No yelling, no guilt, just a quiet code between mother and daughter. Start again.
Get it right. You've got more in you, baby.
Do it again. Most nights, Angela played until her fingertips burned. Her violin wasn't anything special, just a scuffed-up hand-me-down with a cracked scroll, a peg that slipped if she didn't tighten it every 10 minutes, and a bow that looked like it had been chewed at the edges. But when she played it, it spoke. It didn't need to be pretty. It howled, wept, whispered, told stories. It was her voice when words failed. She'd started at 7. Her grandfather, gone since she was 9, had played blues on an old fiddle with a missing string. She still remembered his smile, the way he closed his eyes when he played, like he was somewhere else. "If you can't say it out loud," he used to say, "let the music say it for you."
So she did.
At school, no one cared. When she practiced during lunch, most kids rolled their eyes. Teachers smiled like they were being polite, but they never asked her to play. Not seriously. Not until it became a joke. Until Carter and Randall turned her violin into punchline material. But by then, Angela had already been building something. A piece that didn't fit into boxes. Not classical, not blues. Just pain, turned into melody. No title, didn't need one. It was raw, honest, full of aching edges and hope. And no one but her and the violin really understood it. Behind her silence, behind the thrift store hoodie and taped-up sneakers, Angela Wilson was waiting. And this time, she wasn't going to shrink. But knowing you're ready and proving it in front of the whole school, that's a different storm. The next morning, the sign-up sheet for the talent show was taped beside the broken vending machine. Same spot every year. A crowd gathered. Fingers pointed. Eyes scanned. Whispers flew. Drama, disasters, expectations. At number 16, a quiet name, Angela Wilson. Some kids squinted. "Who's that?" one asked, twirling the cord of her hoodie. "That girl with the violin," someone replied. "The one who never says anything. Probably gonna play Twinkle Twinkle and cry." Laughter. Again. Always laughter. Angela walked past them, calm, like she didn't hear it, but she did. Every syllable, every breath behind the snickers. She folded it up, pressed it to her chest, and turned it into fire. Because this time, she wasn't playing to be liked. She was playing to be heard. At lunch, Mr. Carter lingered by the basketball court, clipboard in hand, pretending like he actually cared who was signing up for the Friday talent show. "No backing out now," he called across the yard, trying to sound encouraging. His eyes landed on Angela, sitting alone near the fence with her violin resting in her lap, quietly tuning the strings. "You ready, Wilson?" he hollered with a smirk. She didn't flinch, just gave him a glance, flat, unreadable, not angry, not warm, just blank. like answering wasn't worth the effort. He raised a brow, shrugged, and moved on. Inside the teacher's lounge, Miss Randall sipped her coffee while flipping through the lineup for Friday. Her brow creased. "Seriously, who let her sign up?" she muttered, motioning toward Angela's name. "She signed herself up," Mrs. Grace said, not even looking up from her stack of paints. "Same right as everyone else." Miss Randall scoffed. "It's not about rights. It's about being self-aware. She's going to get up there and fall apart." Mrs. Grace gave a tiny smile. Or maybe she won't. She turned back to her crossword. Miss Randall didn't respond, but the way she clenched her jaw said she wasn't ready to consider she might be wrong. That afternoon, Angela sat on the edge of her bed, Violin resting beside a blank notebook. Her mom leaned against the doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel. "You sure about this?" she asked softly. Angela nodded, eyes on the floor. "I already said yes." Her mom came in and sat next to her, gently picking up the worn bow. "You don't have to prove anything to people who don't even bother seeing you." Angela didn't look up. "I'm not doing it for them." "Then who?" her mom asked gently. Angela paused, eyes drifting toward the water stain on the ceiling. "I guess me." Her mother smiled and pulled her in close. "Then do it for real." At school, the whispers got louder as the week dragged on. Some kids started placing bets. Some swore she'd back out last minute. Others said she'd freeze. A few even said maybe she'd surprise them, and then laughed as if the idea was too ridiculous to believe. Only one person actually talked to Elijah, the quiet 7th grader who played piano in the music room after school. He caught up to her near the library, his voice low but firm. "You doing something of your own or covering somebody else?" Angela blinked. "Original." He gave a small smile. "Good. Do what they can't compare. Nothing safe ever leaves a mark." She didn't smile back, just nodded once. That was enough for him. Friday showed up quicker than she expected. The gym had been flipped, folding chairs in uneven rows, cables trailing across the scuffed wooden floor. The mic squeaked every time someone tested it. No parents yet, just a sea of students and teachers, buzzing with that mix of boredom and curiosity. Acts came and went. A few singers, a dance crew, one kid with terrible knock-knock jokes. There were claps, some genuine, most just noise. Phones were everywhere. Eyes behind screens. Everyone half watching, half hoping for something to laugh at. Angela sat backstage, Violin resting across her knees. Her fingers tapped against the wood like she was sending out a signal only she could hear. She was number 16. When her name was called and she rose to her feet, nobody expected much. Not from the quiet girl with braids and scuffed sneakers. But what they didn't see, what none of them could have known, was the hallway outside apartment 2B. The smell of overcooked noodles. The worn-out carpet. The silence waiting for her every day after school. No greetings. No noise. Just her and the echo of her own footsteps. Her routine never changed. Bag hit the floor. Violin came out. No snacks, no TV, no scrolling. Just sound. Just practice. Over and over again. The piece she'd composed didn't even have a name. It didn't need one. It started off like something soft trying to escape from behind a locked door. Then, a shift. A sharp, dragging ache that made people stop mid-thought and listen. That's what she worked on most, the transition. Her grandfather used to say, "Make them feel like they've been through something, then let them breathe again." She practiced barefoot, her toes curling into the carpet every time she missed a note. No sheet music. It was all in her breath, in her memory, in the way her hands moved like they'd been doing this since before she was born. The bow was fraying at both ends. Her E-string buzzed whenever she pressed down too firmly, and the bridge tilted slightly, like it wanted to give up. Every few hours, Angela had to start all over again, tuning by ear, adjusting, retrying. But she never complained. Jordan, her 6-year-old brother with the endless questions, crouched in the doorway with his chin in his hands. "Are you gonna win this time?" he asked. Angela kept playing, just gave a shrug. "Why don't you play songs that sound happy?" he added. She paused, bow still in the air. "I do." He wrinkled his nose. "They sound like they're crying." She smiled faintly. Sometimes happy and sad speak the same language. He didn't get it, not really, but nodded like he did, then wandered off. Her mom got home just past midnight, dropping her keys with a sigh and kicking off her shoes. The smell of bleach clung to her uniform. "You're still at it?" she said, eyes falling on Angela sprawled out on the living room floor, her violin resting beside her like a tired limb. "Almost finished," Angela muttered. Amara didn't press. She went to the bathroom, came back with a cold towel, and sat beside her daughter, pressing it gently into Angela's fingers. "Push too hard, and your hands won't push back. They already feel numb." "Exactly." They sat in silence, not awkward, but the kind that feels like understanding. "You sure about tomorrow?" Angela didn't even flinch. "Yeah." Her mom studied her, shoulders steady, eyes sharp, even though her hands trembled. "All right then," she said. "Make him feel it." By morning, Angela had barely touched breakfast. Just dry toast and water. Her hands felt like stone, but she kept stretching them over and over on the ride to school. When they arrived, the gym hit her like a wall. Wax floors, sticky heat, and rows of folding chairs filled with too many people waiting to judge. She pulled the curtain back just enough to peek through. Already the gym was buzzing. Rows of students filled the bleachers, entire classes, teachers in mismatched lanyards, even the janitor leaning against his mop. The assistant principal stood near the back, clipboard in hand, scanning the crowd like an airport security officer. Phones were up, cameras rolling. It wasn't stage fright that hit her, it was heat. A sudden rush of it, flushing her cheeks, making her fingertips tremble and her stomach fold in on itself. 16, someone whispered nearby. "She's number 16. The words didn't need volume to land heavy. Angela slid into a corner backstage, her violin resting across her knees like an anchor. She closed her eyes. No room in her head for Carter's judgments or Randall's smirk or the kids already waiting to laugh before she even played a note. Instead, she thought of her mother's hands, wrapped in an old towel as she cleaned the strings years ago. She pictured Jordan, quiet at the doorway, always watching but never saying much. She remembered her grandfather's voice, rough and steady. Make them feel it. That's all she needed to do. Still, all it takes is a single moment. One tremor in the bow, one crack in your breath, and it's over. When they called her name, the announcer stumbled. "Next up, Angela Wilson?" No thunder of applause. Just a few claps that fizzled out too fast. A cough. A squeak of a sneaker somewhere near the bleachers. Angela rose slowly, like her name had tugged her forward on invisible threads. Violin in her left hand, bow in her right. She walked to the stage, each step slow, deliberate. The front row nudged each other. Phones pointed. Fingers hovered over record buttons. She stopped at the center. No mic, just a buzzing spotlight overhead and a beat-up folding chair sitting lonely in the glow. She didn't sit, didn't speak, just lifted the violin to her shoulder and held it. Silence. A few seconds passed. Then Mr. Carter cleared his throat. Near the side of the stage, Miss Randall leaned forward, eyes fixed like she was bracing for disaster. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "She's choking." But then she played. The first note barely left the strings. It was soft, fragile, like it wasn't sure it belonged in the room. But she didn't flinch. She held it there, let it breathe, and then gently let it grow. By the time she reached the fifth note, the entire gym had fallen into silence. The whispers vanished. The giggles dissolved. It was just Angela. The music didn't sound like anything they knew. It wasn't some viral TikTok loop or a movie tune. It was something else, something honest. Her bow moved like it was telling a story she couldn't put into words. At first, it was slow, tender, like two souls having a quiet conversation, one grieving, the other listening. Then, without warning, the emotion shifted. Her fingers flew across the strings, and the sound cracked wide open, aching, fierce, unfiltered. It was as if her pain had grown wings and was clawing its way into the air. Her eyes were shut, not out of fear, but because she didn't need to see. Everything she felt was pouring out through that violin. When she reached the highest note, she held it, longer than anyone expected. The room felt suspended. No one moved. No one even breathed. Even Carter, who had been scrolling just minutes ago, was frozen. A few teachers leaned forward, eyebrows raised, faces uneasy with something that might have been regret. Miss Randall said nothing. As the final notes came, they slowed like a thread being pulled from a wound. Angela let the last sound linger, not fade. It stayed in the air, echoing inside everyone. Then she lowered her bow, violin pressed gently to her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her heart in place. Silence. And then a single clap from the back of the gym. Then another. Then more. Soon, the whole room joined in. Not wildly. Not like a pep rally. But with respect. With awe. Some kids looked down at their phones, ashamed they'd expected her to fail. Elijah stood first. Then a few others. Then even the ones who doubted her rose to their feet, one by one. When Angela stepped off the stage, there was no grin, no tears, just a quiet stillness in her chest as she clutched her violin tighter than ever. Backstage, Carter gave her a stiff nod, like he wanted to pretend he'd always seen this moment coming. He didn't say a word. Neither did Randall. She just stood there, biting down on whatever thoughts she wasn't ready to say aloud. By the water fountain, Mrs. Daniels was waiting, her eyes soft. She pressed a small folded note into Angela's hand. "You made them feel it," she murmured. Angela didn't open it until the hallway emptied. It was only one line, written in pen that looked rushed but certain. "When they don't expect you to shine, shine anyway." Later that evening, her mom stood by the front door. She didn't ask a single question. She just studied Angela's face and gave a quiet nod. "You did it?"
Yeah.
"They listen?" Angela nodded again. Amara pulled her into a hug, holding her close. "I hope they remember." But applause doesn't last. The real shift happens when the noise fades and normal life presses back in. Monday arrived with gray skies and the scent of damp concrete. The kind of morning that usually made people drag their feet. But not today. From the moment Angela walked through the school's front doors, everything felt different. People looked, not with sarcasm or judgment, but with awareness, with something close to respect. Some gave small nods. A few stepped aside. One girl whispered, "That's her," like Angela was someone from a story. It wasn't fame. It was being seen, the kind that slips into the cracks you didn't know needed light. She passed Mr. Carter in the hallway. He held his phone like a shield and tried to look casual. "Hey, a great job Friday," he offered, his voice catching somewhere between awkward and impressed. Angela gave a polite nod. No words, just kept walking. Then came Miss Dorsey. She stood at her classroom door, arms full of worksheets like always. But this time, she didn't speak right away. She just looked at Angela, really looked like she was seeing someone she'd never bothered to understand before. "Miss Wilson," she said cautiously, "can I speak with you?" Angela stopped but didn't step closer. Miss Dorsey cleared her throat. "I owe you an apology. What I said last week, it wasn't okay." There was a long pause. Angela said nothing. "I made assumptions, and I'm still trying to be better about that." Angela considered throwing back something sharp, something she'd been carrying since the first time Miss Dorsey laughed at her. But instead, she met her teacher's eyes and said calmly, You should have seen me before Friday. Miss Dorsey blinked. That one line hit harder than any clapback could have. Angela turned and walked off. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't angry. She was just done being overlooked. At lunch, Elijah slid a chocolate milk across the table toward her. No words.
Just a grin.
Next duet, "You're not carrying me," he said. She smirked, rolled her eyes. "You're not ready." The laugh that slipped out small but real turned a few heads. For most of them, it was the first time they'd ever heard it. That evening, at home, she didn't touch her violin right away. She sat next to her little brother on the couch, watching cartoons with no sound. Her mom peeked from the kitchen. "Not practicing?" "Not tonight," Angela said. "You okay?" Angela paused, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." Not every clap she heard in that auditorium came from people who cared. Not every smile was sincere. But a few were, and sometimes that's enough to open a door. Some people won't see you until you force them to hear you. So, play your truth anyway. If you've ever been doubted, ignored, or laughed at, remember Angela. Remember, silence holds weight, but your voice, in whatever form it takes, echoes louder. Tell your story. Make them listen. If you love this story, kindly share it, like, and subscribe for more.